Thank you for the introduction. Yes, this is going to be a different kind of use case, but I'm really excited to talk with you all today. My name is Chris. I lead a team of technologists at Code for America. We are a nonprofit civic technology organization, and what we try to do is help government use digital technologies to improve public systems and deliver impact at scale. We partner closely with governments at all levels, primarily at the state level, and our work spans across the social safety net, tax benefits, and criminal justice sectors. Our core values are really about acting with intention, so taking on challenging problems with government, working shoulder to shoulder to build capacity for these solutions. So we've been fortunate enough to partner with a few states now to pilot or implement entity resolution solutions to address a number of issues, reduce administrative inefficiencies, support research and insights into program effectiveness, and also to unlock new government services. And that's what I really want to talk about today. So today I'm going to talk about one project that in partnership with Utah's Administrative Office of the Courts. I'll share a little bit of background here. There are over 70 million people in the United States who are living with a criminal record. And even a distant record from the past can present significant barriers and challenges to pursuing a job, housing, education. If you're a parent, it might prevent you from joining your child on a field trip. If you're looking for an assisted living or nursing home access, it might present challenges to your access there as well. So in most states, there is a process to petition to seal a record, but this process can be really burdensome and time-consuming and sometimes very expensive. So some states are experimenting with shifting this responsibility from residents to the government. So this is a state-initiated process to automatically seal a criminal record on behalf of somebody who's been living with a record after a period of time. In 2019, Utah enacted a law that would seal from public view certain misdemeanor criminal records after 5 or 7 years. However, Utah's law limits not just the types of convictions that can be automatically sealed, but also the number of records someone may have cleared. So in other words, if an individual has too many convictions, those records are not eligible for automatic record clearance. So that meant the Administrative Office of the Courts has to determine if the records are eligible based on both the conviction type and qualities of the case, but also on a person's overall history. And you may or may not be surprised to learn that in Utah, like many courts across the country, records are not organized by person, they're organized by case. And they're not necessarily connected to any individual reliable identifier. So if you've been involved in 3 different cases in 3 different counties, and a court clerk has entered your information in 3 different ways, it's not immediately obvious that those cases are all related. This is complicated by different data entry practices over time that evolved across different courts within different jurisdictions. Some records in Utah include an accurate state ID number or social security number. Some just include a name and an address. Most are somewhere in between. So I think Mike earlier said something about how government is rarely facing a big data problem, but a messy data problem. That's certainly the case here. This is one real world example of somebody with over 50 name variants in Utah court records. So the name has been edited to preserve privacy in this case, but this reflects a real world situation where this one individual has 2 first names, 2 last names, every ordering and permutation you can imagine, and many transposition and transcription errors. So it's really important to accurately link these records together so that the state doesn't erroneously clear records for somebody with this kind of extensive history. That's not the intention. So we partnered with the state of Utah, and we thought we were going to be writing software that determined who was eligible for relief. So that's on the far right side. And we did do that. We translated that complex statute to code. But in order to get there, we really needed to construct these person-level histories. And so to do that quickly and accurately in a way that augmented the state's existing infrastructure, we proposed supporting the state in configuring Senzing to resolve these identities. Now, will this work? The court also wondered that. So before deploying the solution, we partnered with the courts and a consultant at the University of Utah to run a validation study. We took a sample of about 1,500 cases and Code for America ran the end-to-end automation solution and provided a list of eligible and ineligible determinations. And at the same time, a team of expungement experts, such as paralegals and others connected to the court system, manually reviewed those same cases and made their own determination. And so we compared the results. And it turned out entity resolution was not perfect on our first try. But it was awfully close. There's only one case incorrectly labeled due to a gap in entity resolution. But this is very important. The humans were not perfect either. So in fact, the manual process took a lot longer and led to a lot more eligibility errors, most often due to undermatching of non-obvious records. So we're able to show to the judges and the courts, stakeholders, that the automated solution here was actually faster and more accurate, and we were able to show these stakeholders just to build trust and show what's possible in the solution. Ultimately, we identified initially 3 million party records in the system, and that turned out to be about 1.2 million people, so it's 60% compression. There's a lot of deduplication. And we were able to leverage those records to accurately determine who is eligible for automated sealing. And in 2022, the court was able to identify over 350,000 conviction records that could be automatically sealed. Sometime next year, I expect that number to reach about 500,000. So I want to kind of reflect and share some lessons learned and some ideas here. First, that emerging technologies, when implemented thoughtfully, don't just reduce administrative burden in government service delivery, they can actually reposition government itself. And what I mean by that is that instead of being reactive to resident-submitted petitions and forms and so on, new technologies have the potential to empower government to actually be proactive and automate service delivery. And I should say this isn't only true in the criminal justice use case here. We're seeing it in the social safety net. So for example, when we think about nutrition assistance for children, think about like how can we link data sources from different agencies, different data sources to actually pre-qualify families rather than requiring them to submit an error-prone, time-consuming application process. Those are the kind of questions that we're looking at now. State agencies face capacity constraints. They don't necessarily have the resources to build and maintain custom solutions on top of their complex existing ecosystem. And they can't always pivot to some new platform. And so this is really where pre-built models, and whether that's an SDK like Senzing or a modern foundation model, these can be the right choice to bring in some sophisticated capabilities that can augment existing state systems without requiring agencies to build large solutions from scratch. When we talk with state agencies about record linkage and entity resolution, the issue of performance is one of the 3 questions that always comes up. And so this is how we dealt with this. We typically will run some kind of validation study in partnership with the state. Sometimes it's public, like in this case, and sometimes it's not. But this requires partnership. So bringing together domain expertise from the state, along with technical teams, working shoulder to shoulder to test, validate, and build trust in these kinds of solutions. Another question we hear is all around security and privacy. That's easy to talk about because Senzing can be deployed as a microservice, but I'll come back to that. Another common concern is around explainability or interpretability. So we often encounter deep skepticism about new technologies and models that are perceived as black boxes. Agencies want auditability, interpretability, and fortunately Senzing has tools for this. But at the same time, a lot of the stakeholders and folks who hold domain expertise don't necessarily have command line expertise. So I'm really excited by the possibility of large language models and as providing a natural language interface to understand why records were or were not matched, making that logic a little bit more transparent and accessible to a broader audience, and build shared understanding in entity resolution solutions. We've started to experiment with this approach, and folks on the Senzing team are actively developing some really cool prototypes that I think you'll hear more about in a bit. One thing I want to note is that these language models can be run locally in a very secure and private manner, but will typically be more performant if you're if the inference is run in the cloud on specialized hardware, right? And so that may raise concerns around privacy, which I mentioned earlier. So in these cases, I want to highlight it's possible to mask the sensitive data in Senzing output. Paco is a great demonstration of this available. And so, for example, you can replace a specific name with a generic anonymized token, send that to the language model, and then when you get the results back, you can demask the data by re-injecting the real names, addresses, details, and so on. This is a really promising approach, and that's just one way to make interpretability more accessible while thoughtfully addressing some privacy concerns with language models. I'm really excited to listen to some more of these ideas this afternoon, and I think there are a lot of ways in which AI can make this technology more accessible, interpretable in the months and year ahead. So really excited to really looking forward to that, learning more about that. And I thank you for your time. I'll be around. If you have any questions, happy to talk about this project or others that we're working on. And thank you, Senzing, for bringing this community together and hosting us.